In this industry, mistakes mean people's lives could be at stake. The regulations are clear, and those haven't changed with the era of AI, and that is humans are accountable for operational control, which is the authority to initiate, conduct, and terminate a flight.
What do you think operators get wrong about AI right now?
I think the biggest thing is jumping for the tools first, not building the foundation.
Hi, this is Dan Harris, and welcome to the Ironbird podcast. On today's podcast is Toby Benenson. He's the founder of SayFlight. It's a consulting firm specializing in AI governance and operating model design. He's an 18-year operations veteran in aviation, and today we're really going to dive into technology, but more specific AI and some of the pitfalls of where AI and governance around aviation and regulations. But really, it's more from less about governance and more about enablement and how we can utilize AI to really enable operations to make human decisions, which is really what it comes down to in aviation, how to make those faster, more accurate, and correct, really. Toby, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate you having me here.
You got it. We'll jump right into it.
All right.
What do you think operators get wrong about AI right now?
I think the biggest thing is jumping for the tools first, not building the foundation. The foundation is really the decision architecture that has to exist of clearly articulating your decisions throughout the business. Mm-hmm. You can only automate what you can clearly articulate. And when you jump to applying tools, whether that's a scheduling tool or a dispatch tool, you may not be capturing your actual decision flow through the organization and how the business flows based on those decisions.
How tough is it, do you think, for an operator to map their decision flows? Like if you looked at most operators now, how many have them mapped out and how many just go, oh, Mike knows, go talk to Mike?
The majority of operators, I would say, have their procedures documented, but they don't have their decisions documented. And the real answer is it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it's the hard work that's needed if you're going to really protect your business and build something that is lasting beyond just this AI tool or that AI tool. It's about defining your organization and how it operates on those decisions in a way that stands the test of time and can adopt any kind of technology as it evolves in the right ways.
If someone were an airplane operator wants to take that first step of, okay, how do I know I've got, my SOPs, but how do I look at that? How do I look at my decision matrix as different than my SOPs? And how do I start mapping those decisions out? There must be so many different decisions that people make every day, right? And that they have that tribal knowledge.
Yeah.
When you are approaching these with airplane operators, what's the kind of first step that you take to start like, all right, let's start building these bricks on this house of making these decision maps?
For me, it's a little bit easier because I've lived this for 18 years and I've built these operating models. But the first thing is you have the basics. You know what your operational critical decisions are. Mm-hmm. But the key thing is talking to your veterans in the business. It's getting deep into understanding how they're making decisions, how decisions are made and how they're actually made, or how people think they're made versus how they're actually made are rarely the same.
Yeah.
And your veteran people are going to tell you something very different about how they made a decision under pressure with time constraints, many different variables at 2:00 in the morning without the support. And those are the people that can help articulate exactly how they made some of these decisions. These are the edge cases and the things that your manual won't say. Your manual will say, here's the procedure for dispatching a flight. Mm-hmm. It does not clearly articulate how to dispatch the flight in a legal, safe way when you have 5 conflicting constraints and when reality doesn't match the documented procedure.
Situations like, we'll take Aspen, flying in and out of Aspen. The crosswinds are at a point where it's, you're almost legal, you're not legal, you're getting to that point where it's like, can be a decision by the pilots or the crew. There's multiple decisions that kind of run up to those situations. When you're thinking of, all right, how do we start to automate, or operators like, all right, I want AI to make all these decisions, right? What are some of the bumps in the road that you think we're all going to have to learn as we start to implement AI in some of these decision-making processes?
Let me start by saying I've lived that scenario more times than I can count.
Yeah.
And anybody watching this that is an operator understands Aspen is one of those pain points. So let me start from where it begins. It starts the day before. The dispatcher is looking at the forecast. Mm-hmm. They see marginal weather in Aspen and they flag it for discussion with the sales team or customer service. And let's say it's a broker trip. Sales is reaching out to the broker and communicating, hey, marginal weather tomorrow, recommended alternate is rifle.
Yeah.
Broker maybe doesn't want to reach out to their customer right away. He says, okay, keep me posted.
Wait and see. Yeah.
Wait and see. Yeah. You then fast forward to the next day and the crew is maybe an hour before departure discussing with dispatch, and maybe weather is still marginal, but legal. Maybe that crew has been on a 7-day rotation. This is their last day. If there's any delay or issue getting in, the aircraft gets stuck and they don't get home on their last day. You know that the first officer is relatively new. Maybe they pass all the Argus and Wyvern checks, but they haven't been into Aspen before. And this is a training experience for the first officer. Multitude of things that start presenting themselves in conflict where everything looks green on paper.
Yeah.
The system can check whether it's legal. The aircraft is ready to go. Crew duty is legal. And the dispatcher and the crew make the decision, this is a no-go. We need to use rifle as the alternate. They communicate that to customer service. That gets communicated to the broker. Broker communicates it to the customer. And something I've personally experienced is the customer comes back upset because their business partner also has a flight going to Aspen and they have no issue and they're getting ready to depart right then. Now, why is that? Maybe because it's on a Part 91 operation, their own corporate operation, and they have a different set of regulations, different aircraft type. And while all of this is happening and there's pushback, the customer maybe arrives at the airport right in front of the crew and they start putting pressure on the crew. Now the crew calls and this is an inflection point, which becomes an escalation. Now the dispatcher is escalating the decision that they were already ready to make with the crew to the chief pilot. Chief pilot's escalating to the director of operations, who ultimately has certificate authority on behalf of the company. Now you have all these different pressure points and the decision is changing. How do you go about making that decision? In real time, that can be very challenging. And is that in the moment mapped out or is that improvised? And in almost every scenario I've seen since my early days, those are improvised. And the reason they get escalated in the way that they do, like to the chief pilot or the director of ops, is because of relationships that they maybe have, because that's the norm. Or they truly don't know. You maybe have a newer dispatcher that's just going, I'm overwhelmed by getting pushback. And this person's actually a friend of an executive. And now there's a lot of pressure on me to, why can't we go, but that other operator can?
Yeah. How do you see, AI decision systems improving a situation like that?
Absolutely. AI is incredible at processing data faster than humans can. And there's tremendous opportunity in there to defragment systems where it's no secret, especially in our industry, how many different systems so many operators use. One for dispatch, maybe different for scheduling. You have PDF manuals you need to go in and search to find answers. You have to go on different websites to pull weather from approved weather sources. AI could surface information that can help make better decisions quicker, and primarily to defragment those systems a bit, but also to consolidate the information that's needed for an informed decision to be made. And if you can map out all of the inputs and all of the different constraints that occur in a decision, then you can more easily identify where in that particular decision AI can safely participate.
And you can share that information and articulate it clearer to a customer. When a customer says, no, we can't do it, and he sees other people, but if a customer saw, here's all this data on why we're making this decision, that would be a much easier thing to swallow for a customer to be like, oh, wow, like I didn't know all these decisions go into, hey, is this safe or are we comfortable doing it?
Right.
Right. And where humans are taking all this and doing it in our brain, AI can show you, all right, here's this decision, go or no go decision matrix, and here's how we made all these decisions, right?
It's definitely easier to create some more transparency if we can capture these decisions. And I'll take it even a step further with a specific example of in this conversation going to Aspen, during this pressure situation, there's a duty clock that's ticking. And maybe with every 20-minute delay that occurs that they don't depart, the crew is pushing, getting into duty limits and running into a legality issue. AI can calculate a duty day probably faster than a human is going to, looking at when it started, when it ended. If it can capture information in a way that can help a dispatcher calculate duty day, that's very helpful. If it can flag risky situations, if it can look at historical data and see that under all of these constraints and with this data, this type of scenario presents this level of risk based on your SMS captures, it helps to identify riskier situations rather than the capture afterwards. And most of us have experienced the FRAT tool that we all typically have used that measures risk is outdated. It's a checklist, and it's default questions often put together that, largely satisfies safety requirements like Argus and Wyvern, but it can do so much more in an AI-enabled environment.
I think one of the tough parts that I've seen is so many of these decisions are made with a senior person that's done it. How have you seen taking that knowledge from these kind of senior executives for these airplane operator or aviation companies and getting those decision kind of yes or no things down on paper? Is it just like a discussion? How hard is that to do?
To tell you the truth, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But this is really a core principle of why I created SayFlight and operational decision architecture, because you have veteran knowledge that is implicit, that they have had years and years of pattern recognition. A dispatcher that can look at the schedule the day before, and before the system presents any variables or data, they recognize that something is wrong. Yeah. Often it can be a gut feeling. It's knowing that we've gone into this airport many times. I'll give you a specific example. I know way back in my career when we were looking at airports for the first time we'd never operated into, and I was tasked with evaluating Sedona Airport, which is a high elevation, 5,000-ish foot runway, and a very steep gradient. And that steep gradient is not the thing that you may readily see or recognize, but it's data. And what I knew from performance and looking at this, and after I approved this airport after many operations, it was unsafe for our particular operation to be landing in one direction versus the other. So we turned it into an Aspen-like airport, one way in, one way out. That is something that I knew from pattern recognition, how many times we've gone in there, that particular airport under certain circumstances and winds, that when we had a trip that we off-fleeted to be on another operator, they were going to go in there into the runway that we wouldn't let our own operation go into. Yeah. And I flagged that and I spoke up, but that wasn't even our flight. That was off-fleeted. And we pushed and we talked to the chief pilot at the other operation, shared information, shared our knowledge, and ultimately ended up changing the airport to Flagstaff for the customer and explained to them why. And the big piece here was making sure that our customers had the same experience wherever they were going to be flying, because we didn't want them to fly with us one day and then go to another operator and do something else that maybe is unsafe. And they come back and go, why did they do it? Yeah.
And maybe that flight went and maybe they did it, but now the customer's got this idea in his head that, oh, well, this is okay, right? When in reality, the risk profile is raised, and it's our job to do everything we can to lower that risk. And obviously, like, we can't lower it to zero. No one would ever fly or travel anywhere, but to that acceptable amount.
Absolutely. And to answer your first question, how do you actually capture the decisions? Yeah. It's not easy, but it starts with talking to your most veteran people. And I don't just mean, why did you make this decision? And what you often get is a capture of just the outcome. And that's where AI is going to be good at capturing an outcome, but not the how and the why and the context and the multiple variables that went into it. What happened at 2 a.m. and this was under pressure, and there was a first officer that was coming from Burbank and not Van Nuys, where the airplane was based. And they knew that, and so they built in that little extra buffer. They know that this particular captain is going to be going to training at the end of their rotation, and it's really important that they build in that buffer and don't get them stuck in their last day, because then you lose a training slot and you're on the hook for that financially. So there's a whole multitude of things, and the best way to start capturing these decisions is to do a reconstructed scenario with these different variables. Not only ask them, how did you make that decision, under what circumstances, when did you escalate and why, who did you escalate to, how did the decision actually get executed, but you can reconstruct simulated scenarios where you plug in those pressure points and those variables and start capturing it. And it's an architecture that compounds. And this is where ODA really shines, is the more you're capturing this, it becomes a living framework. And it's something that compounds over time because you're getting smarter and smarter. And it's knowledge that gets shared with the 2-year dispatcher that comes in. And they're not starting from scratch. They get to live within an architecture that their veterans have been feeding with their pattern recognition and their implicit knowledge, that makes a 2-year dispatcher start making decisions more like a 10-year dispatcher.
Yeah. I know we're going to talk a lot about governance and where things can go wrong. But it's good to see that, although governance is important, especially in aviation, there are tools that are going to speed up that learning curve for kind of the next generation that come in. As we see all these new tools, and we kind of talked about this, every new trade show, you're going to see 5 or 6 new pieces of software, and they might not all be truly ready and really understand all the regulations. Where do you think the breaking point is going to be? People are going to get these pieces of software. They're going to do things that probably aren't going to be the right thing. What percentage of people do you think are going to learn basically by making these mistakes in the AI space? And what do you think they should do to maybe get in front of those things?
If I could have it my way through proper education, none. We in this industry are big on preventative and building safety around never having an accident. Everybody can be one accident away from shutting down the company and
ending a
career. And in this industry, mistakes and when things break mean people's lives could be at stake, and we can't afford to have that. The reality is I think it's too high a number of operators that are not thinking about the foundation and the operational decision architecture first. That's not to say you need to shut down all of your technology today that you already have. AI is a relatively new hype word that's being used around LLM systems, but it's been around for a very long time. Deterministic AI has been around. It's what autopilot is. Yeah. These are things that can make our environment safer, but autopilot wasn't plugged in before the decisions and how the airplanes operated at every point, every node was clearly articulated first.
Yeah.
And so that really has to happen. I think the breaking point is unfortunately going to be when an accident or incident happens. And what you're going to get is the NTSB and the FAA coming in and asking who made the decision and how and what. And what you may start finding is when they dig in and they look at tools were adopted that maybe give you all green check marks, say that the aircraft is legal, the crew is legal, everything was good to go, and the dispatcher dispatched it, that decision maybe took 15 seconds. Mm-hmm. And that's at a glance. And what you're doing is not exercising human judgment. That's automation bias with a human signature attached. And when the NTSB and FAA see that, they're going to come back and go, okay, but who clicked the button and who's ultimately accountable and has authority? Because the regulations are clear and those haven't changed with the era of AI. And that is humans are accountable for operational control, which is the authority to initiate, conduct, and terminate a flight.
Hopefully, if something like this happens, who does it end up on? Who does the FAA and NTSB say, well, you are responsible? Is it a single person? Is it a director of operations? Like, where will that end?
At the end of the day, there's accountability that's going to be held for every person involved. But the question is by whom? It may not be by the FAA or NTSB for that specific dispatcher. Were they the person that had full operational control, or was it the director of ops? In the 135 world, the regulations say that the certificate holder has operational control authority, so the company itself. In practice, the director of operations holds accountability for operational control on behalf of the certificate holder, and they can delegate to personnel that are very specifically have the experience, expertise, and training to exercise that operational control. And they have to be listed in the manual by name and on a drug test. You have people that are going to be held accountable. At the end of the day, it's the certificate holder. And if the certificate holder loses its certificate, all those people can go with it. And it's not just operational control. It's the salespeople. It's the marketing. It's dispatch. It's scheduling. It's everybody.
Yeah. Not to scare everybody, but is this one of the reasons you think our industry's been slow to adopt new pieces of technology because of kind of the downstream effect of if we give too much trust in the tech and it doesn't perform, then it basically could bankrupt a company?
Absolutely. I think that is one of the reasons.
Yeah.
In a regulated environment, which is really where my operational decision architecture is for, is regulated environments. But my background is specifically aviation. That's where I've started with this. Things move slower.
Yeah.
Especially because it's safety critical and it's regulated. You're not going to move as fast as where you've seen AI pop up in other places. Interestingly enough, you see that the airlines have adopted AI at a much quicker pace than business aviation has.
Yeah.
They're much more network oriented, and so it's been easier for them to do that. Not necessarily all the right ways, but they've started experimenting with it and plugging it in ways that business aviation has not really thought about yet. And a big part of that is because business aviation is so dynamic when it comes to the decision map. It's all these different variables we talked about and often unpredictable. And any one thing can change that. It's not just we have an AOG and we're going to displace passengers, put them on a different airplane. You have like the Aspen scenario we talked about, Sedona. And now maybe you have an aircraft owner that's calling up and saying, I want to do this. And the dispatcher's going, we can't. And now they're texting the crew directly, whose salaries they reimburse, and they see them as their crew. And the owner is now driving pressure and trying to make a decision with the crew. And that turns into an escalation. Now it goes to the director of ops, does now go to an executive. So it's hard to just say, let's plug in AI and let's automate this stuff. It can very dangerously automate the wrong things. But not just dangerously, it can automate the wrong things that create even more friction.
Yeah.
Automated communications that go out to a customer that says, hey, all the flags are green and your flight's good to go half an hour before departure, only to be told, just kidding. Somebody saw something the system didn't and told you otherwise. Now you have even more friction than if you just hadn't communicated anything at all.
What do you think are good first steps for people that want to implement more AI into their operation? Maybe even if we looked at it on a smaller company scale, right? The majority of aviation companies are 8 or less airplanes. They don't have a chief technology officer, right? Yep. They maybe they don't even have an IT person, but they should be thinking, how can I start implementing AI to help our operations? What are some of the things that you think they should at least start off with, just to start to get comfortable with like the possibilities of AI?
This may sound overly simple, and that's because it is. Surprisingly, the very first layer that I'm finding many operators haven't done yet is really 3 steps. One is create an AI policy. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a one-page document, it's who holds decision authority, particularly for operationally critical decisions. That can extend out to every department in your business, because if you can map that out, you can more clearly identify opportunities in sales that are not safety critical or operationally critical that would speed up quoting and would create a bigger funnel for bringing in demand if they're struggling to get more requests. So start with an AI policy that clearly defines where humans have to decide and where AI can participate and what tools can be used. Because I'll tell you, almost every operator out there right now, they must already know their employees are using AI. They're using ChatGPT or they're using Claude. And those are personal accounts where they're taking company sensitive data and they're putting it in there and they're asking questions. Is this MEL-able even? Yeah. And it has no context or connection back to the operational authority of the certificate holder. that's the reality of where we live in. The employees are actually ahead of many of the businesses themselves from an AI usage standpoint. So you create this AI policy and say you can use these tools, you can't use these tools. The next step is, I would say, create an enterprise tool adoption, whether it's Copilot or whether it's ChatGPT Enterprise or Enterprise Claude. It's not that complicated to sign up, adopt it, give your team access, and load your manuals, your SOPs, your GOM, your MELs into there, and create a database that the AI tool has to pull upon.
Yeah.
So if somebody asks a question, it can only ask the questions out of that database, not an LLM model that is going out and searching on Google and looking at, here's generically what I found is MELable on a Phenom 300.
Yeah. Can I get into Telluride at night? It's like, oh, yes, yeah, sure. These airplanes. It's like, ooh, whoops.
And then there's the third step in that's really, really important. And that is defining how to train your employees on the right prompts. It starts with what are the right questions to ask. So it pulls it from the manual and has transparency so that it can cite the source. GOM chapter so-and-so on this page shows this is the rule for going into this mountainous airport at night. If you click here, it'll go take you to SharePoint and open the PDF and you can look at it. To have that training disseminated throughout your whole organization, it's embracing AI. It's recognizing that people are using it, whether you allow them to or not, on their own personal devices.
You might as well control the data that they're going and finding it.
Absolutely.
With it.
Yep.
What do you think is the next step? It's like, okay, I've got my SOPs, my operations. Instead of someone trying to flip through a book, now they actually get to kind of chat and interact a little bit. It speeds up our operation and maybe shine some lights on some things I didn't know. What's the next step from that?
So what I just described is really the first layer of operational decision architecture. And in my framework, the next evolution is to be clearly articulating how decisions are made. And we keep coming back to that as decision capture, building out the map, creating an authority capture of who is authority to do what, and when things get escalated and to who. When are you going to escalate to the chief pilot? And when are you going to escalate to the director of ops?
A lot of these things, and I was having a conversation with Sam Wolf about this, a lot of these things can get to a quick no.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you're going to escalate and get to a no where you could probably save everybody's time by being able to go through a decision matrix that gets you to a clear and fast no sometimes. Because sometimes that's a lot better, being able to get to that clear no quickly instead of having to run through 4 layers of management, right? Enablement is great. Getting more data is great. But sometimes getting to those faster decisions, especially no's, can then be like, okay, this is clearly a no. Now let's figure out what we can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have always said from an operational standpoint, the last thing sales or customer wants to hear is no.
Yeah.
And it can never be no. It needs to be, here's what we can do. Because it's not, no, we can't go into Aspen. Yeah. It's, hey, whether it's marginal, I know you were trying to get there. What transportation can we assist with? Here's what we can do. We can do rifle. If you want to depart maybe an hour earlier, we could do Aspen, and identifying that the day before.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting to that beforehand, that so many of our decisions, we look at so many things 24 hours or 12 or 1 hour ahead. Right. Yep. And where I look back at this and say, well, if we looked at this 2 days ahead or 24 hours ahead instead of 6 or 2 hours ahead, could we have gotten in front of this? Yeah. And an incredible amount of those is yes. Yeah. We could have gotten ahead of it, but why do you think we're so trapped into? Are we overworked? Where it's just like, all right, I can only work 6 hours ahead because I've got so much other stuff to do. I can only do these 6 hours ahead, and so I can't really do all these preemptive checks. Or where do you think where that problem exists? Where it's like, even sometimes, where it's like, we should have known this ahead of time, right? Yeah. Why am I only learning about this now?
Yep.
Where does that come from?
Honestly, it comes largely from not having a living architecture like this it's not just capturing the veteran dispatchers' tacit knowledge and their pattern recognition to see that. It also applies to the director of ops and the chief pilot and these experts that if the director of ops, if you were to call him and ask him and he were to take 15, 20 minutes to really dig in and look at it, he would probably give you that no quickly, or he would look at those things. But it's not feasible in any sizable operation for the director of ops to be looking at and authorizing every single trip, which is why delegation exists. They delegate to these other qualified individuals. And so if you can capture as many of these decisions and do it in real time, and it compounds over time, you start capturing not just veteran dispatchers, but you start capturing director of ops' decisions. And it's a framework where you can simulate what the decision flow is in a particular situation. I'm going to apply this MEL, go through the actual workflow and click simulate, and it will simulate for you what the decision tree logic actually looks like. And that can equip somebody to make a decision much faster and get to the same decision that the director of ops would have made if you picked up the phone and called them, that you can't do for every single flight.
Yeah. How many decisions within an operation are made on procedure versus made on judgment?
A certain percentage of every statistic is made up. I would say procedures in the manuals cover about 80% of things. That's when things go right. The other 20% is judgment from your veterans. That is when things go wrong, unique circumstances that weren't captured in that procedure. And that's the 20% that AI is going to miss.
Yeah.
Today, it's going to miss every time, every single time, because you don't have that tacit knowledge capture from experts. And when you start building that architecture, you more easily start capturing it. But again, more importantly, you're equipping your 2-year dispatchers with a closer level of knowledge to that tenure, because that day where you go, why didn't we see this earlier?
Yeah.
That might be because you have somebody you just hired 2-3 months ago they're a very capable dispatcher who's been authorized to exercise operational control. Maybe they have their dispatch certificate. Maybe they've been working aviation for years, but they don't have that pattern recognition and knowledge from that specific operator of, oh, well, that one pilot really needs to start out of Van Nuys, not Burbank. I know the system says Burbank, but he's a legacy pilot that we promised it's okay if we do this. And those kinds of things get lost on that 2-year dispatcher, and they're not making necessarily wrong decisions, but they're not making the best decision as fast.
What does it look like from the AI? Like, how does AI want to take and organize this data, right? So when you're building these decision matrix, how do you take all these decisions and data and structure them so that the AI can clearly read them, disseminate them, and then make kind of yes or no calls?
Well, it's more about creating the architecture that defines the boundaries of where AI can and can't participate. And I think of it almost like back in the day at a earlier operator, I did a time and motion study where I mapped out every process for every department, every person, and you could figure out how much time was spent on individual tasks and things. And it's more about identifying opportunities for automation and where it's safe to plug in. So if you have this architecture that can communicate to AI where it's allowed to participate and where it's not. Those are the boundaries. And an AI developer can clearly use this to help build the platform to know, stop, I can help. And it goes from recommendation, informational, preliminary, or looking up information, but you define what level of participation. It's not just yes, participate, no, participate. What level of participation can it have in each decision? And when you map that out, I have so many tech platforms that are reaching out to me now asking for help in how operators are thinking, because operators have had a lot of difficulty in clearly articulating what their rules are and what their decisions are. And you have a tech platform that comes in and they've developed this great product that maybe is a scheduling tool that schedules in this way, and the dispatch tool that supports sending out trip sheets and pulling weather in this way, but it's not specific enough for the uniqueness of that operation, and the operation can't articulate what needs to change or how that needs to be adjusted, because they have a fatigue management system that says that a pilot on their 8th day of rotation, if they had more than 10-hour duty days back to back, needs to have a reduced duty day. And those are unique circumstances that don't apply to every operator, but it affects their level of safety and their level of risk that they're willing to take. So if you can articulate that into the architecture, then it makes it a lot easier and takes what I've seen as onboarding goes from what should be about a month for a platform to 3 to 6 months, because you're chasing oh, accounting needs to be involved for this because it affects invoicing. We need to pull scheduling in. The training department needs to be involved because we need to know crew qualifications in order to come up with this answer. And you're now chasing people to go through the onboarding as opposed to, we have this all mapped out. We know where each department plays into this architecture, and we know where AI can plug in. And again, it's not just AI, it's technology. So the vendor now has a really clear roadmap of how to implement and make it quicker.
And every operation is different. Although we follow the, high level same guidelines, there's no one operational manual that's the same.
No.
And it's probably a good and bad thing, right? It's a good thing because you can really customize. A very nice part about AI is the ability to customize and mold it to your needs. The bad thing is, from software developers, there's no one piece of software that covers everybody, right?
Yep.
Want to kind of bring us to why, what it was like first creating the company and what the idea behind it was and kind of where you brought it since inception?
Okay, absolutely. It came about because I saw this AI boom and the hype around this. And I've been an operator. I've built operating models in companies. I've built mission control teams and the operational control structure and lived it myself as a dispatcher. And I saw where this would be going if there wasn't some clear governance in place to help educate both the operator and the tech side in how do we stay legal and safe and also embrace this incredible technology that has incredible potential. It's here. It's not going away. And I think there's a number of operators that are approaching it like, let's wait and see. Don't want to do anything. And those are the ones who will fall behind the curve, as opposed to embracing the fact that it can materially change and improve the operation if done the right way. So I started this out as a consulting business. The idea was I've been a COO at multiple organizations. I've touched on 145 and 135 and aircraft management and FBO operations, and wanted to help smaller operators and other operators that need that fractional COO, because let's be honest, in a startup environment, it's often difficult to hire a full-time executive. And also the COO you hire to build may not be the same COO that you hire to actually oversee what is built. And I've always been able to do both sides of my brain for that. So I wanted to start there, and that's how it initially started. And it's grown into this operational decision architecture as a answer to that gap that has been identified by the FAA. And there was a recent ICAO working paper at the 42nd Assembly last year. IFALDA came in and said, we need a solution for harmonized governance between AI and human authority, where humans are the authority and are accountable for these operational decisions. And you have AI entering at a pace faster than we have any governance answers for. And it's going to create real safety risks. Hallucinations is not, it's becoming more mainstream in the conversations from LLM systems. The black box effect, where we don't necessarily know where it's getting an answer from and what it's giving. And when that starts happening in an operational environment, what looks really confident and correct could be very wrong. And at 2 a.m, when you have 12 flights to release, and you're a dispatcher, you're sitting there feeling relatively unsupported, and you don't have that architecture for I should escalate in this scenario, I don't know what the risk is, you're inclined to start clicking the button approve and get things moving. So I created this as an answer. It's something that I am passionate about. It's frankly 18 years of my experience put into a framework that I want to share with others and help operators to build so that they have this framework, especially as they're veteran people, and myself included. When I've left organizations, there's a lot that goes with me. And what I've always done before that happens is build that infrastructure and that framework so that when any one person walks out the door, it shouldn't just completely disappear with them.
What are some of the questions that you get a lot when you talk to airplane operators about it?
One of the bigger questions is one of the ones you asked: how do I actually capture decisions? Sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do it in practice? Anybody can't just walk in and do it. You can't just walk in with a recording device. It starts with having some credibility and authority and building trust with the people that you're interviewing and talking to. They have to believe that the person who they're talking to has experience, and this is to support them. especially in an operational environment, operational people, we all have had a tendency to be skeptical and a little bit defensive when it comes to adopting new technology that we fear is going to take away control. Yeah. And it's a perception that is not the right one if we can show them that actually it's not a loss of control, it's a cognitive reduction in the workload that you're doing.
Yeah.
And something that opens you up to make better decisions and
more important decisions.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be working in a spreadsheet at 2 o'clock in the morning and, oh, this happened, so I got to, go in and submit an SMS.
The catering's delivered. Let me just click the catering button. And then it's like, all right, I've clicked 5. And now like the 7th or 8th button is actually really important. And like, maybe I should spend more of my cognitive load on those higher decision points. Yeah. We talked about this a little bit before, but having that aviation experience and coupling it with the tech experience. As we see new tech companies come into the space with little aviation experience, what do you think is going to be the issue with that?
I think it's going to be adopting the shiny object first, the thing that gives them green check marks, that transitions them from, we've been doing this manually with a few people, to here's a platform that's going to automate for us checking crew legality, checking aircraft legality, and they're going to rely on the green check marks and think that green check mark equals good decision.
Yeah.
And green check mark doesn't equal good decision. If I could have it my way, we do away with the green check marks. It would be, here's the information, and the human is making a decision, and they can see elevated risk scenarios and things that are difficult for them to calculate. The transition from Zulu to regular time and changing time zones is a perfect example of how technology helps with that. In any FMS software, it shows you the Zulu and the local time, and you can make that determination. I think that's the biggest risk, is they adopt it. And the scarier part is it's not going to break right away. That might work. And it's only once an accident or incident violation happens that they look back and go, well, the technology was, shouldn't have told us that. And the regulators are going to say, but the humans hold the decision making and you decided that. And that's when they're going to learn the hard way.
What do you think airplane operators expect AI to do that it really can't?
I think they're largely expecting AI to be filling this gap and solving their problems of, like, I haven't articulated our decision flow and how decisions actually work in the business. And they think that plugging in AI is going to solve their fragmented decision-making, their technology problems. But really, all AI does is amplify what is there.
Yeah.
So it's an accelerator, it's a multiplier. And whatever you have underneath, it's like taking a magnifying glass and putting it over it. It's going to get you to your bottlenecks that already exist faster. It's not going to resolve your bottlenecks. And that's why that foundation has to be built and exist. How does the business actually flow on decisions, and what is the architecture behind it? And that will help AI to actually follow these boundaries and these decisions to amplify that and the way you want it to be done, not the way you think it's done.
I mean, it's going to be tough for a lot of people because a lot of businesses aren't based on decision architecture. They're based on people. Oh, Mike handles that, right? Yeah. And it's not like, oh, we built this decision structure so Mike can make these decisions. It's like, oh, Mike's figured it out in the past.
Right.
Is that going to be the biggest hurdle when it comes to AI adoption? Moving from that?
I do think it is one of the biggest, because AI is going to learn from the data that you give it. Yeah. And that is data that you're not giving it. If you want AI to be thinking intelligently and being a supportive tool, you're going to want to make sure it's learning the right things and from the right people so that it can support those people. Those are the best decisions being made in the business.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. A duty manager or mission control is looking at a particular situation going, I know that aircraft had an MEL on it the last 2 flights it flew a few days ago, and man, that could come back. And if it does, it's no icing conditions. And that's not going to work for this particular trip. There's another aircraft that's right in the same location. Yeah. The crew is basically already at their hotel the day before. I'm going to put them on standby and ask them to prep the airplane and be ready. I'm also going to call maintenance control and have them on standby so that I don't have to initiate the escalation process to maintenance control. when everything hits the fan, I'm going to have these things ready, and predicts it. And when that actually hits, that's when it's like executed, no impact. And those are the times that it's not getting captured, right? That didn't turn into a big IROP. The only thing that everybody saw was, sorry, we have to change your tail. Maybe it's the same crew. And those are the misses in capturing it. AI is going to see the outcome of a tail change, but it's not going to see the why, and the context really goes into it. And I think as humans start moving on for retirement, or they get promoted and they're not making those same decisions anymore, if you don't capture, you're not going to be equipping your younger people and newer people coming in with the kind of knowledge they're still going to need to learn from and execute. And same with AI. It's a very, very smart tool, but it doesn't have all of the context.
What's the best way to capture then things like that?
To start early, it's to start now. Recognize it as a living framework. And my ODA does exactly that. It's interviewing your people. It's recreating structured scenarios where you're plugging in these different variables and constraints. You're mapping out all the different constraints, and you're simulating when this happens. If we plug in this and it happens, that turns into a different branch in the decision tree. And it just compounds. It's not perfect, but it is far better than nothing. And you're building something that is an asset for your actual organization, because you are protecting how decisions are made. You're defining them, articulating them, whether it's 6 months from now, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, as you're plugging in technology, however that changes, because let's be honest, technology could be very different in the next few years than it is now. Your architecture doesn't need to change, because your decisions are still how decisions are being made.
And I think it's also, it adds a lot of value to operations.
Absolutely.
If someone's looking at two businesses, and you're both a 5 airplane operator, and one operator has a clear decision tree, they've got all this data in their AI model of how they make decisions. They've got all these real world scenarios of, here's all these flights that we've had to make these decisions, and we've fed this back into our AI data model. I mean, there's so many different things that, although AI has scraped so much data, I guess the good thing is a lot of our operational data was not on a website anywhere, right? And if you start to collect that data within your own operation and build your own kind of AI infrastructure of just data knowledge bases, that has real value. Yeah. And that can really charge a small 5-8 plane operator to add real value to that airplane operator. Yeah. So when they go to sell, you're selling your operation, but now you've got this, very valuable data. Say, all right, here's our data, what we've tested all of our data models on in all of our decisions. Now you get to have, not only these 5 airplanes, but now you've got to have these 800 decisions that we've said yes or no to, that now you can immediately plug and play, where you don't have to go through those scenarios yourselves. We've already gone through all these different things. It's moving to like data as a value.
And data provenance is incredibly important with this too, where you can have AI equipped and going, okay, here's where I'm allowed to participate and not, but there's a provenance issue too, where maybe it's pulling weather. Just a little thing that operators may not, immediately realize is weather sources have to be, from a place that's approved in your operation specifications. It can't just pull from anywhere. It needs to be pulling from a specific place, and that may be different for, different operators, where it's pulling aeronautical charts and things. And absolutely, this architecture becomes a governance structure for people and for AI, is the kind of thing that is going to be absolutely necessary for creating that foundation, but also making AI smarter and more capable. And more importantly, from a governance perspective, defensible. Yeah. The decisions that a human is going to make with AI participating become defensible, because you can point to an architecture that explains why and how it was done. Yeah. And the biggest value add to this being a living framework is capturing those edge cases where there was a system override. Mm-hmm. If you've allowed AI to participate in this way and it's giving green check marks, but the dispatcher knows I'm following my gut and here's the decision architecture I'm looking at, here's the decision I would make, and they decide to override, capturing that as the feedback loop that makes that a stronger architecture that learns, it's living. And those decisions may evolve and may change over time as you introduce new constraints.
Where we look at business value as, all right, let's see how large your fleet size is. This is a whole nother section of business value to be like, all right, how big is your decision matrix? How many decisions have you run through this that you've provided feedback of yes or no? And how much has this AI kind of brain, like how big is it with your operation versus maybe some others that haven't gone through all those scenarios? Every scenario and every data point that you can run through it, if it's, listen, you could just dump a bunch of bad data and it's not great. But if you're running through a decision matrix, you're providing feedback. Now that is just growing your system to grow your database of decisions. That adds a ton of real value. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, people will say, all right, well, show me your operations, show me how much data that you have that I can now take and ingest into my company and add it, onto mine.
Yep. And by the way, it also very heavily satisfies many of the parts that are becoming required by regulation in SMS. Mm-hmm. And that's coming imminently. And, most operators in our industry have SMS. They do it not just because safety is critical, but also for safety ratings that they can put on their brand. But this is something that actually is an architecture that can connect to and feed into safety monitoring and capturing not just the outcome of a decision, but the real decisions that are going to lead to safer outcomes.
Where do you see the first, small decisions being made with AI that will be beneficial for people that, don't want to dive too deep, but they said, all right, I want a couple small wins. Where do you tell them to go? All right, here's where we'll start looking into, using AI to help us start making decisions.
The most logical place is what I mentioned first, is just getting an enterprise tool and getting your employees comfortable with using it with your company's governance around it. Because I think you can attest to the same, both you and I playing around with AI tools. It is not just a chat function. There is so much more that many out there don't realize is behind the hood, and it evolves into becoming more savvy and using it and leveraging it, understanding it. Educating oneself on using it and using it the right way is what leads to real discovery. And you might find that some of your people discover some of the most amazing things in your organization and go, I think I could help, create this in this way. And you're empowering them. You're giving them the superpower of learning how to elevate themselves and in turn elevate the business. And the other thing is, I think a real opportunity is by doing just that, you're defragmenting information search to a large degree. When people are searching for real answers in a manual, I can't tell you how many times I've had to Control F when I open a PDF and then go find it, but you got to hit through 400 different words that match that word search to find the right section, instead of asking the right question that's clearly defined in your training, and here's the prompt you can ask. And it basically knows the prompt because you've already told it, here are the prompts somebody's going to ask. And when they're looking for icing procedures, de-icing procedures, that is the kind of thing that overnight would make an organization, especially a small one, go, that really just took us to the next level, and gets their employees excited about it because they're already itching to use it and already are in their personal time. Yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot of the companies that embrace it and that provide that enterprise Claude or Codex or ChatGPT that empower their employees to say, build things. Mm-hmm. Okay, you have this problem. Let's figure out how to not have that problem again. Right. Go build a tool. As long as it's encapsulated in our kind of governance, right? We've given it the rules that you stay encapsulated in our governance. And, it's from a data access and a data sharing standpoint, as long as we're controlling those two things, build away, go build something that you're having these problems. I mean, that's a lot of the things where I've accessed it is where I've had problems. I had a blocked tail and I was waiting for the operator to flight follow with me when they're in position. They didn't. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, well, I don't want that to happen again. Let me go build an ADSB tool. Let me go connect to the FAA. Like, where can I go build a tool to fix this problem? Because I don't want to have this problem again. Right. Or I'm duplicating information in multiple systems. Like, all right, well, that's not a good use of my time. Yep. Can I build these micro tools to do it within? I think an important part will be having that overall governance of AI.
Yes.
And to empower our employees, like, here's what you can do.
Yep.
Within this structure, like, go fix your problems, right? For a very long time, we were stuck with, subpar software in our space because it's not a great space to build software. For a very long time, it wasn't. I don't think people really saw the value in software. It was a very hardware focused, business. But now, as that's changing, as software is opening up, now is the opportunity to empower your employees to get, all right, you have problems. This is frustrating. Fix it. Go build something. But I think, like you said, the important part is taking that first step to be like, all right, here's our AI infrastructure. Here's what we want to do. And here's what we don't want to do. We don't want to mess with customer passport data or credit card data or any of that, right? We're going to separate access of certain information, but anything within this, like, go build something great. Yep. And I think we're going to see a ton of new internal micro tools, small for small and large.
I agree.
How do you think we share these tools with everybody and become, and empower everybody else in the industry?
It's a great question. Everybody may not have realized it yet, but I can tell you, having gone to the last MBAA, I had a little bit of a revelation walking around and seeing that so many of us as operators over the years have been basically pigeonholed into choosing a few options you have to choose for this solution. And it either has the capability or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then you're still doing manual spreadsheets and doing this and that. And we've almost overnight moved into this world where solutions are possible, options are abundant, becoming abundant. And if you put that foundation in place, first and foremost, and the governance, and you map out all these decisions and you define where AI can participate and where it can't, I think you're going to have these micro tools popping up within the organization that fit within the governance the right way, get shared, and others are able to use it. And more you're seeing the cost of these platforms coming down, FMS software and things. And what I'm starting to see is a lot more of the plug-in tools that actually fix some of the gaps and the issues that these bigger platforms aren't solving. And I think that's huge, and I think it's necessary.
For an airplane operator, aviation company that wants to take the first step, but wants help building kind of the guidelines and governance, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Or what do you think is a good engagement for an airplane operator to engage with your company? What would you look at as, like, not the perfect engagement, but like, hey, here's where I can really help?
My entire career, I've been a problem solver and a talker. So I'd say the best thing to do is hit me up. Let's talk.
The build versus buy question.
Yeah.
I think it's very different maybe now than it was a year ago or very different than 5 years ago. How would you tell operators to approach looking at what can I build and what do I build versus maybe what I should buy from a software standpoint?
I think that question becomes very easy to answer when you've done this hard work of mapping things out, because you'll look at what's available out there in a way where you're shopping specifically for what you're trying to apply the tool to, as opposed to, oh, I heard about this company, I'm not really sure what they do, and I'm going to reach out. Oh, they do quoting, booking, but they don't do this piece. But okay, here's in our map, in our decision architecture, quoting, booking is a perfect place to better automate, and trip feasibility during the quoting phase is someplace we can really hit on. There's some really great things that are being built out there. And even just myself building out this framework, I've discovered so many of the right tools. If I were running the operation today, if I had 10 aircraft, if I had 100 aircraft, if I had 500 aircraft, I know, looking at some of these tools, which ones would fit my operation. And that's only because I've mapped out this framework and built it out, and I see where it would really fit.
Where do you think we are? What do you think's changed a year from now if we sit back down? What's changed in the kind of AI and aviation space, do you think?
I think you have everyone acknowledging that it's here. Yeah. We passed some pretty significant milestones in AI in just the last few months that have really changed the landscape. and I think it's becoming more obvious to everyone. And I think in the next year, I'm very hopeful that more people will hear this, and I will have reached enough people in our industry, and they'll catch on that this kind of architecture is something that will be abundant and embraced while they're adopting AI. And it's already being heard heavily in the airline world. And I feel very strongly that the business aviation world needs to jump on the bandwagon too and work towards this. So I'd say foundation and AI and embracing is going to be pretty abundant in the next year.
Awesome. Toby, I really appreciate you coming on. There's always, AI is always fun for me to chat about. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that'll happen over the next year. And I think not a lot of people are talking about governance. And I think if structurally, if you can set up that good structure and guardrails, I think when you think of structure and guardrails, you don't think empowerment. But I truly believe, after having this discussion with you, that if you can set up those guardrails, it will empower people to be able to build better and safer in the aviation space.
That's SayFlight's motto. You can only automate what you can clearly articulate.
Yeah.
That's where it starts.
That's true. Yeah. Toby, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Daniel.
You got it.